Here's how you can get instant free feedback on your grammar in Spanish so that you can figure out what's wrong, focus your efforts, and make progress on the things that matter to you. If you're new here, I'm Connor, and this is Breakthrough Spanish. You might have a general feeling that your grammar in Spanish just isn't where you want it to be. It's just not good. There's something wrong with it that's bothering you. Maybe you're aware of what it is specifically, or maybe you just have this vague feeling that it's just not quite where you want it to be. To focus your efforts, it can be kind of a challenge. At some point, most Spanish learners start to have conversations with people, and one big way that they feel like they want to make progress is by getting corrections from the person that they're speaking with. But there's a lot of debate in the research about whether or not getting corrections mid-speech from a Spanish speaker, basically getting your corrections pointed out to you while you're speaking, there's a lot of debate as to whether or not that is effective. And I don't have a definitive answer for you, but at least in my personal experience, it is not effective. It takes me out of the moment. It keeps me from expressing my ideas with fluency, and it makes me overthink. And that's because to say things both fluently and correctly, your grammar in Spanish needs to come out automatically. The grammatical structures that underpin whatever it is you're trying to communicate, those need to be automatic. The big question then is, how do you make it automatic? How do you make it so that the stuff that you want to say actually comes out in a way that's understandable and correct? Well, a big way that happens is just through tons and tons of exposure to Spanish. This is hopefully something you're already doing, listening to as much Spanish as you can, paying close attention to it, things that are at or just above your level. There's tons of great resources on YouTube in Spanish. I have a handful of videos in Spanish. Most of mine are in English. There are lots of channels out there with awesome videos just in Spanish that can help you do exactly this. Listen to tons of Spanish that's near your level. That'll help you internalize grammar in Spanish without you having to sit there and analyze every piece of it. A lot of it will just kind of sink in a natural way that doesn't require you translating from English into Spanish in your mind in order to communicate an idea. But for a lot of people, that doesn't work for everything. There are going to be certain ideas that you are frustrated by that you really want to get right, basically. Certain pieces of Spanish grammar are going to be troublesome to you or really important to you to fix. You really care about them. Or you just notice that there's something off about your speech or your writing, and you're just not really sure how to fix it. And rather than trying to get feedback on your spoken Spanish, what I recommend and what I find more helpful is using writing for this. Writing gives you a lot more time to think and make the connections in your mind with the things that can help it actually stay memorable to you and help you get it right in the future, basically to make it be automatic. And since you probably don't have somebody who is always available to instantly correct your written Spanish, here's a simple exercise that can help you get some feedback on your Spanish so that you can figure out one or two things that are wrong and go work on them and incorporate them, start to make them a bit more automatic in your Spanish, your spoken Spanish. So there are 5 steps really, pretty simple. First one is just to pick a topic. It's important that this topic be something that you're interested in. If you pick something you don't like, you're never going to want to do this again. Nobody's forcing you to learn Spanish. So make sure that the things that you're doing are fun and enjoyable to you. Pick a topic that you like. Then step 2, take 5 to 10 minutes and write about it. Open up a Google Doc. While you are writing, don't stop to look things up. Do your best to express what you're trying to express with the grammar that you already have. Worry about its correctness or verify its correctness later. Same thing goes for the vocabulary that you're using. If there are words that you don't know how to say, do your best to work around them. Try to find a synonym or explain your way around the situation. This is exactly what you do in your native language when you don't know a word. You don't just stop and look up the word. You say it's that thing that does this thing. You can do that in Spanish too. The next step, number 3, is to start verifying what you've written. Here is where you can go look up the vocab that you were missing, and you can start to notice the things that the spell checker is telling you are incorrect. Because Google Docs is recognizing that your text is in Spanish, it's going to suggest certain spelling mistakes to you or basic grammatical mistakes that you could fix. Doesn't catch everything though. And so for that, we need this next part, which is to take what you've written and put it into a machine translator. I like DeepL.com. Take what you've written, put it into Spanish on the left, let it translate your Spanish into English on the right. Then take their English translation and swap it. Let their English translate into their Spanish. It is important to double check that the translation in English that it gives you sounds natural, because you're going to use this to translate back into Spanish. That way you can compare their Spanish version of what you wrote to your Spanish version of what you wrote. While you're doing that, line by line, you can go through and see where the differences are. There may be pieces of grammar that you were unsure about, and by comparing it to what you see written there, you notice that that their machine translation has come up with a different response to the problem that you had. We all know that machine translations are not perfect, but generally speaking, they're grammatically correct. Not always the most idiomatic ways of expressing ourselves, but for the purposes of communicating an idea correctly, usually they're pretty good. So you can take what you see here, the differences between your writing and the writing on DeepL.com, their version of your Spanish, and pinpoint one or two things that you notice that you want to look into more. You're basically using this as a way to figure out a couple of things that you can work on that you notice are errors of yours in Spanish grammar. Because when they're an error that you make that's relevant to you, it's going to be a lot more memorable. And you have the context and the motivation to want to fix that particular piece of grammar, rather than it being some abstract rule that you've never tried to use before. So take whatever it is that you find, one or two mistakes in your written Spanish, and here's where you use your Spanish grammar book that you might have, or go to Google and type in the rule. Open up your book, go to the page with the rule that you have. Maybe the issue that you had was with the imperfect versus the preterite. I flip to the page with imperfect and preterite and read about it a little bit there. Now that I just made this mistake, I have, again, the context, my own personalized context to this rule that's going to help it stick in my mind a lot better than if I just read some abstract rule and then hoped that next time I was trying to speak with someone, I would remember it. This isn't the end though. There's a fifth step, and that is to take what you have just learned and rewrite what you wrote in the beginning, focusing in particular on the one or two things that you told yourself you were focused on. So if you were, again, focused on imperfect, the imperfect tense in Spanish, your focus when you're rewriting this is on that. Don't worry too much about the other pieces of grammar that make up what you're trying to write. Focus specifically on this one thing while you are rewriting what you had written originally, trying to get this particular piece of grammar right. When you do it this way, as opposed to getting corrected when you are trying to speak with somebody, it gives you time to process, consider the mistakes, read relevant examples, and practice right there in that moment. It's no guarantee that the next time you go to speak with someone, you won't make the same mistake again. Often we need a lot more repetition for things to stick. But broadly speaking, making the effort to dive deep into a grammar rule that's relevant to something that you have created, that you have written, is going to be a lot more memorable. You're going to have a better foundation in that piece of grammar, so that next time you come across it, when you are listening to something or reading something, you will notice it and it'll start to reinforce, and the ties between what you're trying to say and the correct way to express it in Spanish will start to get stronger. So try this out. Let me know what you think in the comments, if it was helpful, if you tweaked it, found a different way to make it more helpful to you, or if you know of any other better tools for getting your grammar corrected automatically in Spanish. Also in the comments, if you have questions or suggestions or requests for future videos that you would like me to make that would be helpful for you, feel free to let me know there too. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.